Hey there, listener. Welcome to the Deep Share Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rouse, and for the last couple of decades, I've slowly been opening my eyes to a very different world than the one I grew up hearing about. And the more conversations I have with interesting people, the more mystifying this world becomes. So without further ado, let's get deep.
We've got science to celebrate! Demons bliss now! Octopus, baby, come on!
There is rebellion in the wind. It will be crushed.
Everything I've said is true. It's real.
Dinosaur fossils? God put those here to test our faith.
A damn lie. I saw them with my own eye.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
We did illusions, man! None of it is true!
I'm not insane.
This is mass madness, you maniacs! In God's name, you people are the real thing! We are the illusion!
Hey, man.
What's going on? How are you?
Good. How you been?
Good. I'm in we've got family over, so I've been kicked out of my studio.
Oh, my goodness.
Been reverted back to a guest bedroom for a couple days.
Well, I guess you can probably put up with it for a few days, huh?
Yeah, I had this really good, new location, but the Wi-Fi signal didn't get in there, and I was just doing a episode like a couple hours ago, and it kept dropping, and I was like, this is not going to work. This is going to make me insane. So I'm here with the boring background, but at least the internet works, because that's the most important thing. So
hell yeah, man. Exactly. Cool. So I've almost finished your book, and it's fucking great. It's fucking great.
Thank you.
I think it's your best work yet, honestly. It's fucking awesome, man. I really like it.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's like a nice progression from where you left off. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like hey, this is what's happening now, guys.
It's funny you say that, because I started on it when I was writing Controlled Demolition. I was waiting for Berwick to finish up his parts to it. And so while I was waiting for him, and it was like months, and I was like, I got to do something else. So I started writing this, and wrote like a huge chunk of it while I was waiting for him. So that might have something to do with the tone. Then, of course, I had to go back in. That was 2019 when I started on it. And then I had to go back in and be like, okay, now COVID's hit. And so there's more. There's more to this,
crap.
So.
Yeah, it must have felt like a huge piece of like a puzzle you had been building for a long time. Finally got a big missing chunk that was left under the couch somewhere. Oh my God.
Exactly.
Like, where does this fit in?
It's like, wait a second, this is the piece we were looking for, and now it fits here. Now this thing is making more sense. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. That's really
Oh yeah,
nice.
man. And welcome back to the Deep Share. And I am honored tonight to have the host of Macroaggressions and author of Octopus of Global Control, the controlled demolition of the American Empire, and now Hypocrazy. I'm hoping I'm saying that right.
Hypocrazy. It's
Hypocrazy.
It's hypocrisy spelled differently. It's just with crazy on the end instead of crissy.
Hell yeah.
And I feel like maybe that's kind of appropriate for the times we're living in right now. I decided I'll put Uncle Sam in a straitjacket on the cover, because that seems kind of fitting. We're all nuts these days. Everything has been turned upside down. So why not? Let's have some fun with it, shall we? Point out the insanity in the book, and then laugh at everything.
Oh yeah. And actually, yeah, the front of the book, the imagery is so perfect. It sums up kind of this, it just like personifies the insanity a lot of us are seeing. It's almost like us in the straitjacket, just like, what really is happening?
Rocking back and forth, going, just get me out of here. Just you want me to take the shots? Okay, the shots, fine. Just make it stop, But of course, we know it doesn't stop. It's never going to stop. There's no stopping to this. There's no off ramp to this level of insanity. So we're going to have to take it back for ourselves.
Damn right. And that is the message that Charlie Robinson has put forth in a lot of his books and his podcast. And it's good to have you back on the show, man. Really appreciate you being back. Here.
It's funny. I've got an episode I recorded with Bruce Fenton that'll be going out
nice.
Soon. And of course I met Bruce on your show. So
yeah.
So we keep it sort of full circle here, and to get Who would have thought that you bring in the UFO and maybe extraterrestrial seeding life guy to bring in some normalcy to your podcast?
Dude, yeah. And I had him on recently again for yet another roundtable, and I was telling him, like, dude, your daily posts on Twitter, that's like my news channel, kind of. It's like my what was it, Beale from that movie Network, you know, it's the guy screaming out the window, you know. It's awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's where we are. We've normalized UFOs and aliens to the point where we're begging for them.
Yeah,
what a hell of an agenda they've developed for us.
Yeah, I saw something online today where like some big bait, and you know, like, oh, we're gonna have this big new conference on UFOs coming up this week or whatever, and the comments were just like, are the MSM weighing in on this? Like, are there news channels like that are going to be covering this? I'm like, why would you? Is that really happening? People care in that community what the MSM is saying. It's like, oh my God, what has happened here? It's not the same game anymore, because they've even subverted a group that was already subverted. Like, it's a nightmare, you know?
Totally. Yeah. But that's the power. That's the power of the media. You know, they've gotten people very comfortable with turning their television on in the old days, I guess, still to this day, to get your information. Maybe now it might be news online, you know, I'm going to go to msnbc.com and see what they have to say about things. Why would you? Except that you get sort of trained into it so that you think, well, if I need information, this is where I go for information. So I think part of this needs to be retraining people to seek their information sources elsewhere, and just to understand that the mainstream media is just pathological in the way they deal with us, that their agenda is much different than a lot of people probably think. And so they just assume, oh, well, it's the news. Maybe they're going to be a little bit slanted this way or a little bit slanted that way, but still I'm going to get the news. No, you're not. You're going to get one version of reality, which may or may not be consistent with the facts. You're definitely going to get an agenda. It's going to be skewed. Yeah, there is the right leaning and left leaning and all of that, but the theme running throughout is CIA involvement in all of it, whether it be right leaning, left leaning, talking about UFOs, talking about whatever. It's always going to have an intelligence agency component to it. And the difference between what's happening here, when Jeff and I write the book Controlled Demolition, we're talking about making comparisons between the Soviet Union and the fall of that empire and the American empire and the coming fall of that. The difference is that in the Soviet Union, they knew that their media was full of shit. We don't collectively. We do. In your audience, my audience, they know. But the vast majority of people still haven't figured that out. And until we figure that out collectively as a society, we're going to continue to go, I can't believe, I can't believe what they're saying. Oh my God, this is crazy. And then it didn't happen like that. Wow, that's really weird that the media got it wrong. Really? It's weird to you that the media got it wrong on all of this? That the media with a straight face comes out and says, oh, well, the Southwest Airlines thing has absolutely zero to do with vaccines. It has to do with weather. And it's like, well, then why is it the only airline being affected by it?
Right.
And it's like, well, because of the sun and the sky, it doesn't make any sense. And so we as a nation or as a society, we have to do a better job of getting our information from more reputable sources. And I never thought I would say that going online to get your information is where you need to go, because it was so demonized early on. I was like, oh, would you find out on the internet? It's like, as a matter of fact, I did. And I got a better chance of getting it right if I found it on the internet than I do if I turned on my television set. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, that sentiment is coming from someone probably that's using the internet for everything under the sun already and just finds that comment convenient in that moment.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, I touched before on how like the cover of your book like really reflects just this insane feeling looking around at other people, and it feels like their plot, their plan, whatever you want to call it, has just become so obvious. And I know we've talked about it a number of times here and there. It's so obvious. It's so on the nose. Do you think that's like some sort of sense of like inflated confidence in the plan, like some very human, very like a fallacy of humans to just be arrogant in the moment? Do you think that's what it is?
It could be that for sure. It could also be a litmus test to see, like, we put this stuff so obvious right in front of their faces and they still didn't figure it out. Like, oh my God.
It's the small percentage over here. That's it.
So it's like, how far can we take this? Let's do something really idiotic and see if they'll buy it. And then they put it out and everybody buys it. And they're like, we can take another step. We can move that line one more foot. You know, we can collect it. We can continue to do this. So part of it is, you know, that they put, look, stuff that you talk about on your show is like, part of this is like revelation of the method. This is like part of what you show, that you tell them what you're going to do before you do that, so that you're karmically, cosmically cleansed of this bad juju because you told them, and then they didn't step up and do anything to prevent it. So there could be an element of that sort of like putting it right in plain sight, which happens. Could be arrogance, could be that, you know, I've been telling people this, that I feel like when you get to the point where you're having to offer people a year's supply of Krispy Kreme donuts to take the vaccine, that is clearly not plan A. That is plan C or D or whatever, but it's not their first plan. So if you've already got to that point, and we've gotten to that point, we've gone past it, the plan must not be working that well, because if you have to dip into the lottery tickets for taking the vaccine, you're now into a new component, which is the carrot phase of this. Well, we'll reward them. We moved through that during the summer. Now we're in the stick phase, where it's take the vaccine or lose your job. After this, they're going to run out of tricks for us. So hold the line, you know, and stay sane and stay committed to your ideals, whatever that may be. If it, like in my case, I'm not taking the vaccine under any circumstances. Other people may feel differently about that, but whatever it is that you believe in, and you say, this is what I'm going to do regardless, hang in there, because I actually see the insanity as a good sign. Because they wouldn't be doing this. They wouldn't need to go to this extreme length. They wouldn't need to gaslight you at this level if it wasn't for the fact that they're having a hard time selling this obviously flawed narrative. And so the more we sort of recognize that, the more that we see the insanity, not as like, oh my God, are we ever going to get out of this craziness? No, it's like, yes, you will. And when you see them doing things like this is a good sign. This means you're getting closer to the wheels falling off of this agenda, because what you don't want to see is none of this stuff. Because if you don't see any of this, this means that everything is going like clockwork, you know, that they're if you see these, but when you start to see these guys freaking out, when you start to see these mayors and these governors freaking out, when you start to see this insane behavior, it means that they're getting their asses chewed out by their bosses at the World Economic Forum. And you felt like during the summer, or maybe it was the spring, I don't even remember, but you felt like there was a big meeting that all these people went to, and they ended it, and the guy running the meeting ended it with, I don't care if you got to give away lottery tickets, just get these fucking people vaccinated. And you go, because they came out of the meeting and like immediately it was like lottery. Now these people don't have any creativity, these governors and people. They're doing what they're told. They're being told to do this. They came out of a meeting where the suggestion was, I don't know, give them lottery tickets or something. Yeah. And they went, yes, let's do that. So when the governors are to the point where they're giving away lottery tickets to get you to take the experiment, you've got to recognize that as at least a bit of progress, because they're not having the sort of compliance that they expected or need, because if they were, you wouldn't see the lottery tickets coming out. So it's clearly not happening.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. There's a lot more hope when you see the insanity.
I'm trying to be optimistic.
Me too, man. Me too. And it's hard. And like, I think I told you before that, like, I've kind of tried for the most part to avoid the contemporary COVID stuff, because I find it's useful to look back, way back, because you see these same patterns throughout time, of course. And I've hit a breaking point, it's like, all right, I need to, just express how I feel about these contemporary things and not act like it's not happening. Because I think that's part of a false sense of security on the other end. There's a lot of like a spiritual movement of such that's just positivity 100% and that nothing bad ever happens. It's all about your perception of it. And I think there's a good way to look at that. But at the same time, it's like we have to recognize that this thing is now in our backyard. It's like, wouldn't you say it's like we've been spending years practicing with these conspiracy theories, years and years, and now it's like this is game time almost. I don't know. Is it like that, or is it going to be subtle like it's always been? Everybody hopes for this one moment of clarity. Like, is there going to be some big move by government to like seal the whole deal in this agenda? Like, now we have you. Or is it really just going to be this subtle transition, like, that always seems to happen when things go this way?
I mean, it feels to me like the Agenda 2030 year goalpost that they set out there has been moved up. That's what it feels like. I have no evidence to that, but it just feels like everything's like, they're like, hurry this up, because they're moving faster than normal. That also is a good sign. The faster they move, it means they're going to make mistakes. They're going to, like if something is, if you're outside and something's in the bushes and it moves a little fast and you catch it out of the corner of your eye, if it had moved just a half a step slower, you wouldn't have seen it. But because it moved a little bit too quick, you recognized it. I feel like that's kind of what's happening with a lot of these mandates and this government overreach and all this stuff. It's like, it's moving so fast. People aren't even having time to really get used to it. And they're on to the next insane thing that at some point you go, why are you doing this so quickly? So it seems like there's a quickening effect to them. Now, I feel like that is, though frustrating and annoying and scary, also kind of a good sign, because if you can get them out of their scheduled, it's going to take 10 years. If you can get them thinking that it's got to be 4 years instead of 10 years, and we got to hurry this thing up right now, then you have the opportunity for them to make mistakes or just botch it, which these people are good. We have to remember that they are not perfect. They have us convinced that they have all this power and that it's pointless. Why fight against that? But these are just coercion tactics. I put that in the book, like the Biderman's chart of coercion. Like there's 6 steps to it, man, and it's like they followed it to the T. And so, if it happens too quickly, back to your question, if it happens too quickly, it's going to be obvious that they're trying to transform society under some false pretense. So if they want to do it right, they got to do it slowly. But I feel like they can't do it slowly because seems to be somebody telling them, step on it, like, let's make this, like, wrap this shit up by 2025 because we've got big plans. So I don't know if that is, I don't know if that's how these things always play out. And I don't know if that's how this one's going to play out, but it seems like it to me. And so I'm actually kind of fine with them hurrying up, because I know that when they hurry up, it will make things more obvious for the normies out there. We already spot this and we see kind of where it's going, but it'll be more obvious for the normies. It'll be more of an indication that they're desperate, that they'll have the faster they try to do this, the higher the chances of waking people up. And wouldn't it be funny if they tried this big COVID operation, and in the end, it had sort of like a 9/11 effect, which is it woke up a huge generation of new people to because 9/11 woke me up. It didn't happen in 2001, it happened a couple of years afterwards, but that event made me go, just something about it's just not right. There's something about this story that doesn't add up. And then you guys wanted to go into Iraq so fast, and it never, and they never had any. That's what actually woke me up. was the invasion of Iraq and them trying to tie it to 9/11. And I was like, I'm against this. I'm against these wars anyway. But the Iraq war specifically, I was against because it was like, you're just trying to clean up the mess that your dad botched, like I felt like that was obvious that it had nothing to do with 9/11, yet they were trying to tie it to 9/11. So it's like, okay, that woke me up. What if there are a huge percentage of the population out there right now that are going through this COVID thing, and they're going to get to a point where they go, you know what? It's just something about it doesn't sit right with me. I just feel like they're not being honest. I don't feel like the testing was right. I don't feel like they lied about the numbers. They lied about everything. And it's like, go with that thought. You're there. You're moving in the right direction, because if you start to pick at this thread of COVID, what you'll find is that it's got a lot of 9/11 fingerprints on it too, so it's got like the same sort of invisible thing that's going to get you unless we spend $1 trillion and transform society and bomb the shit out of this place or close or bomb Manhattan, bomb right. them economically, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Manhattan, all these places, whatever. I mean, we're still doing some of these crazy things. And so COVID and all of this might wind up having that unintended consequence of these people think that they're going to get us into this fourth industrial revolution, you'll own nothing, Klaus Schwab fantasy world of the World Economic Forum, but they're going to go too fast, make too many mistakes, contradict themselves, get caught lying so much, blow the whole narrative. And then in the end, we're going to go, that was a lie. You're a bunch of liars. Now let's go look and see what you guys have been involved with before this. Let's go look at Fauci and AIDS. Okay. Is that a lie? Oh is that, let's go look at the role of some of these, let's go look at Gavin Newsom. Let's go see what that guy's up to. Okay. You're lying to us about this. Let's go dig into your past. Let's go see what's going on with you. Let's go look into, it starts you thinking, if this is a lie, what else is a lie? And that could be, wouldn't it be ironic if they overplay their hand, they push this thing too fast, and in the end, they wind up waking up more people to all of their lives. And that is where my optimism is in this entire thing.
Hell yeah, man. I totally agree. I see that more and more every day, and like we were talking about how crazy and obvious it's getting. The more obvious it becomes, the more that's what immediately hits me. I get excited because I'm like, I picture like 500 people like seeing that didn't see this before, but then suddenly was like, oh shit, what's happening? This is right in my face now. Finally the gears start turning. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
a matter of time.
There's always that one thing. There's that one thing.
Yeah.
And you just go,
it's got to be personal, right? It's got to be a personal thing. Because like we spend, every one of us, we all have podcasts. We all do this. We all are screaming our truth and everything, but it really takes whatever that one person is affected by, it seems, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like for you, it was real estate, right?
Yeah. And for me, I lived through the real estate.
That was a big part of it anyway. Yeah.
And that woke me up to the financial part of it. But let's just imagine if your uncle got killed in Vietnam, right? And then you find out about the Gulf of Tonkin incident, the non-event, and you go, wait a second, you mean that whole thing was fake? And they're like, yeah. And that started us into this war. And so that to you is very personal. That is your entry into this. Whatever your entry point is, just get in, you know what I mean? So that's your entry point into it. And it might be Vietnam for you because Uncle Bob, and it might be 9/11 for somebody else. It might be COVID. It might be Sandy Hook. It might be the Oklahoma City or whatever, it's one of these things. And you go, I don't like the feel of this. And then you look into it yourself, because you know that nobody else will. It's out of the news cycle, or you don't trust the news. And maybe that's part of this. And you start to dig in, and then it becomes real to you because you're putting in your time and energy, and you discover that this thing that was bothering you, there was a reason why it was bothering you, and you were right to be bothered by it. And if that's bothering you, what else is out there that could be, so it starts you down the rabbit hole, as they say. That is, that's how it happens for a lot of people. And then you sort of get, depending on your level of interest or time availability, things like that, you start to kind of get, at least in my case, I just wanted to figure out how all this stuff works so that I wouldn't be the sucker playing 3-card Monty, getting suckered in like everybody does. You're going, how do I keep losing at this? So like for me, it was the living in Las Vegas and working in Las Vegas real estate during the big peak, and then boom, the peak, and then the big crash where everything just collapsed, and living through that and watching the shadiness of it all while it was happening, while it was booming, and then trying to understand the financial side of it and how Wall Street works and how the banking industry works, how money is. So that to me started me down this path, not because I'm like, I'm going to write a book and do podcasts and things like that. I had no interest. I didn't know any of that stuff was going to be in my future. I just didn't want to be a sucker anymore. I just wanted to stop being on the short end of that. Cause it's like, I got creamed in the .com stock market thing, made a lot of money on the way up, and then didn't see the signs and got creamed on that. You get creamed in real estate and then same thing with when oil peaked in 2007, and my buddy was in an oil company and he's like, put money in here. So we're doing all, and then I just kept getting screwed on these things. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm just bad at figuring this out. And then it was like, well, or maybe there's more to the story. Maybe there's some manipulation going on behind the scenes, and maybe it's all of the above. Like maybe I was just picking bad stocks, but you go back and you look and you see like, okay, I see how this cycle works. I see this is when the people are getting in. This is when these people are getting, the smart people are getting out. But while they're getting out, they're on CNBC telling you to stay in. And like, oh, they're lying to us. Oh, those guys were already out when they were saying that. Oh yeah, they've been out for months. Oh shit. And then so I had to like come to a realization about my relationship with the mainstream media. I had to understand how money works. I had to understand that I was a part of this unwittingly, being in the real estate industry and selling houses to people that wound up losing their houses. I lost my houses too. I had 2 houses and lost them both during this. So it was like I was drinking the Kool-Aid. I was a victim of it. I was enthusiastically cheerleading this whole thing too, not knowing until someone gave me Confessions of an Economic Hitman by John Perkins when I read that. And I went, oh my God, this is much bigger. It's a much bigger play going on here. I had no idea that any of this was happening. And so it's like, what is it going to be in your life that's going to get you into this sort of stuff? Is it going to be a 9/11 or COVID, or are you just going to lose your ass on your house? Like I did.
Yeah.
Could be something as simple as that.
Dude, John Perkins' book blew my mind wide open. And I think I immediately ran out and bought it for my father too, because we always butt heads on these topics, and I don't know if I ever actually gave it to him or not, but man, that book was so right on the nose that you start to see the patterns of what this crime family like behavior has been going on throughout the world. And I'm curious, like where your research has brought you. I mean, how far back do you think this corruption goes? Because it's not American necessarily.
No,
it definitely doesn't feel like new international bonding or anything like that.
No.
It feels very old, but I'm just curious, like how far back do you tend to have your curiosity go?
I'm curious about how far back it goes, but I don't know. I don't like, there's the people that are like, oh, these Italian banking families in the 1600s and everything. It's like, I'm interested in all of that. I just don't know. I don't know how far. I personally don't focus on stuff that gets back too far because I just don't know all of the ins and outs. I mean, we're talking about bloodline families. We're talking about international banking cartels and things like that. These are things that have been around for a long time, like these organizations like the Catholic Church and the Vatican and all of that institution, and the royal families and all of the royal families, the families in not just in England, but in in Belgium and in the Netherlands and places like that, and what sort of long-standing dynasties they have, and the Rockefellers and Rothschilds and groups like that. And you just go, okay, well, there is one thing that is for certain. Like, I don't know about blood. I don't know about like Anunnaki bloodlines or any of that stuff. Like, I'm into it. It's
Fair enough.
fascinating. I'm totally down for learning as much about that as I can. I think it's a crazy cool story. I just don't know. What I do know is that when you get these groups, these families that start to make a lot of money in, say, banking, like the Rothschilds did, they get to a point where they wind up having more control than the countries that they're living in. The companies that they own wind up becoming more dangerous. And then they go about protecting that racket. They go about doing the things that you need to do to protect it. So some of it is wealth preservation. Some of it is deception. Some of these people are just psychotic. But when you run banks and you own banks, and this is part of what led me to my understanding of this, is when you start to look into the Federal Reserve and you go, oh, it's our central bank, it's owned by the government. And then it's like, no, there's a lot more to this. This is the source of the majority of our problems, are these banking institutions. And I describe that as, in the first book, The Octopus of Global Control, when we're talking about the 8 tentacles, I said the banking tentacle's the most dangerous. Yeah. The military tentacle is in charge of the final death of it all.
It's the actionable thing, right?
Yeah. In that sense, you can sort of measure it through the military arm. But the sort of damage that the banking tentacle has done to this world is almost impossible to quantify. They are responsible for global poverty. We've been talking for the last 18 months about, if only we could get this vaccine, we can save some lives and everything. It's like, what about all the people that are starving or have no water? We could fix that problem. Are we really talking about saving lives? Because if we are, there's some lives that are a higher priority than the ones in the United States, facing a virus with a 99.98% survivability rate and a median death age of 80 years old, when the median death age in America is 78.
Right. And so, even in our own streets, we have people that are in more need.
We have our own homeless. We have our own starving and things like that. So it's like, banking does that. Banking makes that possible, makes that paradigm a reality. And so, but it doesn't get a lot of attention because it's so boring. It's banking and it's guys in suits and everything.
It's the jargon and the terminology that seems almost deliberately confusing, but it's not. It's just, you got to be interested in. It's weird. I never had the itch to get into it. Now I kick myself for still seeing it as intimidating to even really try to look into the financial angle to all this,
Yeah, it's because it's boring and it's like,
it's not though, is it? I mean, it's
not though.
It's
that's
like that's global espionage. And
that's the thing.
Exciting James Bond shit.
They've taken all the fun out of it intentionally so that you're not interested in it. That's part of the reason why it's like, you'll get calculus in high school, but you won't learn personal finance. It's like, they want you to be dumb. They want you to be not dumb, but unsophisticated when it comes to managing money and understanding how money works and how it doesn't work and things like that. So if they can get you sort of ignorant to that, then you're much more likely to fall into traps, which is what was happening to me. I was falling into these traps and not appreciating it very much, and knowing that these guys were setting them, and then knowing that I was falling into them. And I was like, damn it, this has got to stop. Maybe if I understood the game better, then I would, I would be a better player in this game. And so that took me to the banking thing. And then now we're talking about bloodline banking families being some of the most dangerous around. So it went from super boring to like super duper interesting. when you're talking about like hundreds and hundreds of year old family trees that have all run these banks, and who knows how much money they have, and who knows how many people they've had to kill to keep this thing going, and how many wars they've started. It's like, this is the most interesting story ever. I mean, it's like, it went from real boring to real interesting real fast. But it was not accidental that it was suppressed like that, because if they can keep us ignorant to it, then they can just run that game all day long on us.
Yeah, dude, it reminds me of like watching like Goodfellas when I was growing up, or The Godfather and stuff like that. It's like they were able to express their stories through fiction. It's like, this is really how it's funny how we even have a mafia. Like, why do we even know about that? Because it's like, it's a convenient example. So it's like, yeah, look at this that exists. It's not us, but check this out. It's terrifying, isn't it? That this exists in society. Don't worry, we got you.
Yeah. What's funny is that my friend Corey Hughes, who does a lot of research on JFK assassinations and everything, he has got down to, he would tell you that the reason why you know about the Mafia is because of Frank Valenti, who was the head of the Motion Pictures Association, who made for like 40 years. And he made it so that in Hollywood, you focused on the Italian mafia instead of the Jewish mob, who was really running the show and running Hollywood, but they didn't want you to know it was them. So they made the Italians look bad. I don't know if it maybe even to say that it made them look bad might even be inaccurate, because it actually kind of made them look really cool to a lot of people.
Scarier and more intimidating.
Yeah, more interesting. They played up this angle of this, it's the Italian mob and the Italian mafia. And it's like, who was running Vegas? Wasn't the Italians? You know what I mean? So there's even deception. There's deception everywhere.
Yeah. Do you think so? I mean, it's hard to say, I guess. Like, do you think there's like one thing behind it, one brain behind the whole thing? It does feel like a lot of factions that maybe are privy to the same information as one another, perhaps, but maybe vying for their own ideals or own agendas.
It's like when you write a book, The Octopus, it makes there's almost like an assumption that there's one main thing controlling this whole thing. It's really not. It's really more of a group of loosely affiliated douchebag crime families. Yeah. And people say, oh, so do they have a big meeting where they get together and discuss everything? Well, sometimes they do, and they call that Bilderberg and the United Nations and Davos. And sometimes they don't, because they don't actually really need to have the big meeting. These guys know what benefits them. They know what works best. They know what they need. They know what regulations they need to control. Like you said, they're probably all working off of the similar information. And that might be where, you see how things go. But you've got certain crime families, and the Clintons and the Bushes. Hey, they're big enemies. Well, they work together a lot. There's that. You've got the Saudis and so if you think of it like a really big Venn diagram with a lot of interlocking circles, where sometimes they come together and partner, and sometimes their interests do not align. Sometimes they're not in on it, but like, the Bushes and the Saudis, the Bin Laden families, the Bushes and the Hinckleys, the Bushes, like, hey, there's a lot of overlap with some unusual families that find themselves in the orbits of the, so what are they working on? Who are they talking to? So it's not one monolithic entity that's running everything. But if you wanted to sort of if you wanted to give people maybe the best description of like what it could look like if it was this octopus, it would be the interlocking boards of directors of the largest corporations. That big floating plastic garbage patch in the ocean of corporations, if you want to use that sort of weird metaphor, that's all sort of connected together. sometimes intentionally, these interlocking boards of directors where I'm sitting on your board and you're sitting on my board, and that guy sits on our board, and that, they all, when they boil it down to who's really running things, it's a lot of these corporations that you've never heard of. It's a lot of these LLCs that sort of are intentionally vague and boring and don't really mean anything, but that's a good sort of description of who has a ton of influence. Are they running everything? No, nobody's running everything. But I mean, unless we want to get into the alien component, but or
the alien component,
which I'm down for. But these people are all kind of working.
It's a company, right? It's like
a company. It's like a company where there's lots of franchisees.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
It's sort of like McDonald's looks the same in every country. You kind of want the same things, but when
one of them serving cat, so it's a little different.
One of them, you got to make it a little specific regionally, to what their people are into, but they're under different owners. Maybe ownership groups. Maybe there's a LLC that owns 1,000 McDonald's, I'm sure there is. And maybe there's a guy that owns 12, so so I think that this, who's running things, lots of people that are, lots of bankers, lots of people that are sitting on boards of directors. I'll tell you what, man, it's not the guy. It's not the guy. It's not the terrorist guy with the, with the hijab and in the Muslim garb. It's the fuckers with the $5,000 Brooks Brothers suits in the city of London and in Washington, D.C. and in lower Manhattan that are the real terrorists. They're the real dangerous people running this world. And those guys have got you convinced that the enemy looks very different from them. But make no mistake about it, I think Ron Paul said it right, that there's more criminality happening within a 5-mile radius of his office in Washington, D.C. than in anywhere in the world. It's
Absolutely.
true.
Yeah.
So in this idea that like, oh, you conspiracy theories with your conspiracies, it's like, hang on a second. Just think of Washington, D.C. on a Wednesday morning. There's got to be at least 100 conspiracies happening there before breakfast. You know what I mean? Like, you're talking about power and money and protection and making sure that those people don't see what you're actually doing. Of course, there's conspiracies. They're happening everywhere, but we're not making a lot of these things up. There's some of them are made up, I'm sure, but we don't have to make up conspiracy theories.
There's too much
when we've got actual conspiracies that we can analyze, so this is where some people get a little bit distracted, or they don't want people to perceive them as being into these sorts of topics for fear that they'll be branded as a conspiracy theorist, and that's the worst sort of designation you can have. Well, I would just say, listen, if somebody calls you a conspiracy theorist just say you're a conspiracy analyst. You're analyzing actual conspiracies, not theorizing about make-believe ones. I mean, you can, and that's fun to do. And I love to, like, I don't know what's going on. I want to know what's going on. If there's an inner earth, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. If you get into that, you are speculating to a certain degree. And so people go, see, you guys are all crazy. And it's like, no, we're just talking about cool stuff. But you don't need to, you can say, well, that's one version, that's one topic, but we're talking about government stuff. We're talking about COVID stuff. I'm not talking about the inner earth anymore. I'm talking about documents that these people put their names on and signed, and emails going back and forth, and money changing hands that we can see. I'm not talking about the inner earth, man. I'm talking about Fauci's emails that say he's spending money on gain of function.
Yeah.
That's an actual conspiracy that's happening, not some theory. So these are things that are important for us to be interested in and to dig into. And they've done a masterful job of getting you tarred with this idea that you're going to be a conspiracy theorist, a crazy person wearing a tinfoil hat, because they want you to not dig into their stuff. And they want you to not do that because the stuff that they're up to is the sort of stuff that we would be into digging into. You know what I mean?
You bring up the gain of function thing, and honestly, I've been ignoring most of the articles I've been seeing come out in the past like 2-3 weeks, because 3-4 weeks ago, it's like maybe even a little further back when the gain of function stuff was really starting to hit everywhere. It was like, okay, well, and maybe this was pessimism on my part, but I immediately had the thought like, okay, well, if it's being reported, then they've found a way to talk about it that's okay for them. Right. I mean, that's the first thought I had, was that, well, if anything is being talked about that sounds like it might help us, and it's coming from the mainstream media, or I don't know if I trust Rand Paul, and I like him. I like the character he portrays, at least, I do. So it's like
in the same boat.
It's all hitting, and we're all seeing it. I worry. Maybe am I being too paranoid, Charlie?
No,
because I see it being talked about, and I immediately go, why are they telling us the truth now?
Well, I don't even know that that's the truth.
I know.
That's where it came from. You know what I mean? I think it's the truth that he was financing gain of function research, because he's doing that. I mean, there's all that. But I frankly, my little conspiratorial mind, when someone says, "Where do you think it came from?" My mind goes to a U.S. weapons lab, like Fort Detrick or the one in Galveston. That's where my mind goes to. My mind goes to, hey, if I was going to do this, and I'm a crazy globalist maniac running this operation, you'd be pinning it on somebody else, right? So of course you would make it look like it came from China, or that it was Chinese. I mean, I would go to the US military games in Wuhan in the October of 2019, where you've got all these people from all these different countries that are all going to get, I don't know if you've read that document that came out where
was this about the testing that they were doing? They were going to create a new COVID or our new coronavirus or something?
No, the military, the U.S. military games, like the Olympics for the military, was held in Wuhan in October of 2019.
Oh,
and
yes.
Went there, and a lot of the people were like, that city's really trippy because there were no people anywhere. We heard rumors that the government told all the citizens to stay inside. And we didn't know why, and we didn't know what was going on. We just knew that the place was really weird. And then we knew that a bunch of people got sick, and the stuff that they got sick with we didn't know what COVID was, but it's what they had matches what COVID was. So we think that our guys got it early. Now they're starting to send letters to Lloyd Austin and to General Milley asking him, tell us what you knew about this, because we've got all these reports. I mean, now we're starting to get Congress people involved in asking the military, tell us about this. So really where my brain goes to is this is some operation that was from a U.S. weapons, bioweapons lab that was intentionally released in China to pin it on China, to cause this whole thing, to create the Great Reset, to create the Build Back Better, to get the World Economic Forum. I mean, you've got Event 201 role-playing this. You've got SPAR's pandemic document that came out in 2017 role-playing this almost identically. I mean, there's a lot of, you've got to have some real magical thinking and some real coincidence theories happening before you go, there's a lot of advanced knowledge of this stuff. This wasn't an organic, it certainly wasn't wet market bat story.
No. That feels like something else, into like symbolism of some kind that they're throwing at us, or something.
Yeah, like don't you exactly? That's why I like you go into like you get into that side of it too, which I can forget, I can miss sometimes, and then it's like,
oh, yeah,
that's
weird.
Right. There's that other layer on top of this where they put the little, like the icing on it, where it's like a nod to their buddies. Like,
yeah. And that's the part that I find is so hard to sell to so many people, because a lot
programming,
of it, that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's hard. But then I think predictive programming is getting a little bit easier on people, because it's like every time I turn around, my wife and I are watching like a movie. We've been doing this thing where we can't find any modern movies that we're into these days. Nothing coming out is any fucking good. No. For the most part, in my opinion. So we've been going back in time to the 90s, the 80s. Every 5 minutes in any movie we're watching, we're just looking at each other like, are you serious? What the fuck symbolism was that about? Like, it's just peppered everywhere. It's too much. So it's like after a while, yeah, well, like you said, too many coincidences. You can't deny it anymore. You know?
I love that stuff though, but you know, and then that makes you think like, okay, these people are really devious because they're planning this years in advance. You know, they're putting their symbols right in your face, knowing that if you ever find this out, you'll know it was them and you'll know that they did it. Because it's like their movie when they've got the pedophile triangle symbol like right behind the person, and you're like, and I don't know what it means for 40 plus years, and then all of a sudden I see it and I go, oh, holy shit, it's right there. So that's like another layer to this whole thing, which is the spiritual side where they want to show it to you. They need to put it in your face. They're taunting you. They're mocking you. They're giving themselves power. They're sending a coded message to their buddies who see that and wink and go, I know what that means. You know, there's like a whole nother language being spoken that we don't even typically notice. Right. And once you get a little bit deep, you start to figure this out. I'm still learning all these things. I'm still finding it fascinating.
Once the algorithms start finding you,
then you go, oh, you know, like you start to see a whole new layer. And then you think these people in Hollywood, man, there's some devious motherfuckers there too. They're putting some hardcore messaging in there that's not accidental. There's some things that are happening in these movies well in advance of major world events. And you go, okay, that seems a little bit too coincidental. Like, did somebody know this? You know, and I know we can also make something out of nothing. Like, oh,
we can, yeah.
Watch, hands on his watch. We're at 9/11, and it's like, I don't know, maybe
it's hard, yeah.
But then there's some things that you see, and you're like, whoa, okay, hang on a second, and now. God, I mean, I don't know. How do you feel about this? Like you turn on Netflix, if you want to go watch, I loved Black Mirror until it became like present day.
Right. Like, oh wait, this is now. Now this isn't like, some creepy future anymore.
No, it's kind of like, are you seeing that too with these I mean, futuristic movies that you're like, I kind of don't want to see what my future is going to be now because it doesn't look very good.
Sci-fi has always been my favorite subject. You know, it's that classic story with, you know, love planets, love space, love all of it, love Blade Runner and Doom and all that. It's my favorite shit. But yeah, like I said, we can't watch anything new. It's mainly me being upset about it because I'm looking through all these endless sci-fi movies. It's all just the same crap. And I do. I just see that all I need is Terminator. It gave me the message at 7. Terminator 2 told me, oh shit, look out for the robots that are trying to kill everything that's organic. Okay. And that set the stage. I didn't need any more, but now that's all it is. It's all about AI taking over everything or video game stuff. Like here, this is an interesting thing that I've stumbled upon just for the hell of it. This digital twin stuff. Have you heard about this? Yeah. This whole matrix that they're building, kind of like a digital future. And this is part of their great reset, I guess. But there's also an interesting thing going on in video games where there's a lot of frauds out there making really shitty quick demos and selling the crap out of them and just making a ton of money. There's a game out there right now that people suspect that's what's happening, where they're just promising this ridiculous over-the-top game. They're making people pay for it and stuff like that when it's not even out yet. People think it's a scam. But what this game is a literal digital copy of Earth where you can literally use the stock market. Like, commerce continues on this digital game that hasn't been released yet. And they're selling meter by meter blocks of this planet to fund the process of this game. And a lot of times when these scams happen, they never come to fruition, and, you know, developers fall off and, oh, sorry for your money loss. That's it. That's the end. And I'm just curious, do you think that those two worlds might cross? I wonder if they're using the video game popularity, that world, as a way to kind of harness in the people that, I don't know, it's weird that they're creating this digital fucking like twin planet for us to play on in this quote unquote game. Meanwhile, all this weird tech is coming out that doesn't seem very nice.
Yeah, man. Like you see the, Facebook buying Oculus a while ago and taking over that VR space. You go, okay, well, what sort of memories are they going to put in that VR headset of you? I mean, they know all about you, they could make it seem so real, and that, and then, so I did a podcast with these guys in Japan that do a sci-fi movie review show. And they came across my show and they liked my, they said, would you come on and be like a guest movie reviewer? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And they said, you can pick whatever sci-fi movie you want. And I said, well, I want to do Minority Report because so much of that shit is coming true. Right. So I went and watched the movie twice and I'll tell you, that movie came out in 2002. It was about a time, it was predicting 2048 or to
somewhere near Blade Runner. I know that
2052, somewhere like there, right in that range, late 2040s or early 2050s. And some of like a lot of the technology that they were talking about in that future is already out. I was watching that movie now going, oh shit, it's getting faster and faster and faster. The technology that they're talking about is getting, the stuff that they had was like, drag and pinch and all this sort of
that's true,
touchscreen type stuff. And a lot of the tech that was in the house was like Alexa type stuff. And so it really kind of freaked me out because I realized how dystopian we've gotten, and yet it's been kind of incremental. And I think video games helps to get kids there. I don't play video games anymore, but when I was a kid, I was just obsessed, be it Atari and ColecoVision or arcade. It's Saturday and Sundays, man, I was at the arcade, like just playing video games. That's all it was.
Hell yeah.
And
those existed.
I know. And now I've got a buddy who, they're in the video game business. They started, they build video games or anything. Like, great for you, man. You've been able to kind of keep this going. And I think that there's really great, things for kids to learn from playing video games. I'm totally for it. But I do also recognize that the U.S. military spent a bunch of money to create a video game.
Which one was that?
It's the Army. It's this U.S. Army. It's the Army's video.
Yeah,
it's like a first-person shooter game, and like that's for recruitment, and that's devious, and they know it, and that's bullshit, and they're doing it on purpose, and so like you've got that, and then when I was selling real estate in Las Vegas, I sold a house to a guy who was a mechanic who worked at Creech Air Force Base, which is not Nellis Air Force Base, but Creech, which is sort of out in the boonies. That's where they fly all the drones. In Afghanistan and Iraq and wherever, they fly them from Creech Air Force Base right outside of Las Vegas. And this guy was the mechanic that worked on the cockpits where the pilots fly them. Wow. And so, I know that that's happening there. So there's a video game component to that because those people are killing wedding parties, guests at wedding parties and children and things like that with drones that they're flying on the other side of the world. And it's got to seem like a video game to them. We saw the Snowden collateral murder, Apache gunship footage in Iraq, and that changed it. It's terrifying. And it looks like a game. If it was a game, it'd be super fun to play. Like if you could play that game, that'd just be amazing. It'd be, but like, unfortunately that's real life. And those people are really dead. And so we've got that to worry about because the propaganda of the U.S. military, they're trying to get people however they can get you, whether it be sponsoring the NFL for the Salute to Service month, where they fly, where everyone's got camouflaged gear, branded merchandise for their own team, but in a camo pattern. And then of course you have the flyovers for the Star Spangled Banner and stuff like that. That the military pays the NFL to do that. This is all part of their propaganda campaign. And so it's like, so using video games to get kids by the United States military, pretty shitty, but that's what you do. If you want to get kids' attention, right, where are you going to go? Video games or music.
Yeah. And I think all of these topics that we're talking about, especially this, is that, it's a matter of the person giving the game to their kid or playing it themselves, and what cognitive ability do they have, and what are they passing on, and what frame of reference are they giving to their children with these video games? Maybe that's the right message. But going back to a different point, we were talking earlier about how just how crazy everything's getting, and it seems like a lot of us, me included, feel like there's so much false start to just taking the reins back and taking your freedom back. It's like, I heard who used you, and you were on False Reality Check with the homies. Shout out to Legs in Buffalo. You guys were talking about how it would be great if one day none of us filed taxes, and that'd be great. And I think you mentioned how and of course you're that guy that's hoping you're not the one that doesn't do it, the only one that doesn't do it, and it's like, I feel like, aren't we doing that on a mass scale right now? Like, we are, so many of us, in this community specifically, we see what's happening. We see the asteroid coming at us, and a lot of us are still just going, well, my neighbors haven't packed up yet. Okay. No one's getting dragged out of their houses yet. I can stay with my job and I can keep my Netflix account. And, please let me hold on to this thing that I'm, I don't know, I'm preaching against.
It's part of it is where we've become, accustomed to it, and we want that normalcy, but we're not, we've got to come to terms with reality. Things are changing. And, these people have kind of pushed all their chips into the center over the last year and a half with the crazy mandates and all. They've lost all credibility with people. The police are acting like maniacs. Congress is acting like drunken sailors, trying to spending money. The Federal Reserve's printing 40% of all US dollars into existence just last year. I mean, all this stuff is this is insane. It seems like it's the last push. Like, it's all hands on deck, do whatever you have to do. Like, if this doesn't work, we're screwed, Yeah,
maybe they are.
So make it work. Like, that's kind of this feeling that I have, that I feel like, that it is it. So we, as content creators, we have we have to sort of put our money where our mouth is. Like, one of my sponsors is a prepping food company.
Damn right.
Better believe I bought some of their food. How stupid would I
have too
if I was like slinging their products and then didn't buy it, and then the shit came and I needed it and I didn't have it? I'd be the dumbest person in the world. So, I feel like we're all getting sort of forced into coming to terms with how fragile this society is, and how really it's held together with like Scotch tape and all these things that we feel are like super secure, like our supply chain and our electrical grid and all like these things can go out tomorrow, and so I run this really fine line between trying to like talk about that stuff and get people thinking about it without it being like fear mongering.
Yeah.
Because I don't even, it's like part of me doesn't want to even put that out there into the world. I kind of want to be like, no, we're going to get through this. We're going to do positive. We're not going to need all this stuff. But the other part of me is like, well, I feel like I sort of need to also be realistic that we're headed into a very unusual time, and like I really miss the stable times. But
yeah, me too. I miss liking movies.
I miss liking movies. Yeah, there is some, there was some nice components to being asleep. You could just watch a TV series for what it was and not know that, the underlying theme was all a gigantic lie run by the bankers, run by the globalists, instead you can be like, you just shut the fuck up and enjoy this movie.
Yeah, seriously. The steak tastes delicious. Just enjoy it.
The steak tastes delicious. Exactly. There's an understanding of wanting to go back to that. There is, but it's like, what are we going to do? Like, if you recognize this stuff now and you see what's happening there, I feel like I have an obligation to at least talk about it and say, do you also see these things? Am I the only one that's losing my mind? Or does this seem like inconsistent with how you would behave let's just say as in a pandemic? Would you be doing all these things? Am I the only one that sees this? So I don't know. It's that weird line between trying to like talk about the stuff because it needs to be talked about, but without giving it too much energy, and also still appreciating like what we do have and kind of focusing on like other good things, not to say forgetting that we're getting our rights stripped from us left, right, and center, but I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, but also simultaneously, while being pissed off about that, be appreciative for what we have. And maybe this is maybe we're going to be forced into becoming a little bit more self-sufficient, and that won't be the worst thing in the world. Maybe we kind of needed a reality check. Maybe this is what communist countries go through right before everything's about to fall apart. And those people figure out, I need to get the fuck out of here, or I need to come up with a strategy, or I need to develop the Underground Railroad, or I need to have some sort of plan in place. Because if you don't, you get loaded up in a boxcar and resettled in the East because you don't know any better. You just believe the propaganda. So it's like,
it's a growth period, right? I mean, it really does feel like, that's a good way to approach it. Kind of like a therapy session. We're getting regressed right now. We're all as a society kind of getting regressed to all of our problems that we want to ignore. Yeah. And now we have to face them. But I mean, the good thing is therapy usually leads to growth, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Maybe we needed that. Maybe we were a bit too spoiled. I don't know. I'm glad a lot of people are waking up though to the fact that the media is not their friend, that big business will praise you one year for being a brave first responder and then throw your ass out the next year the minute you get on the wrong side of the narrative. That's been an awakening for a lot of people. Like, oh, I thought my company cared about me. Really? Yeah. Some companies do, most companies don't. So we've had a rude awakening to some of the realities of corporate America and who really runs things and how they tend to operate. And I think that some people that are, especially people that work in like the medical industry, the healthcare field, have seen just how quickly they can go from hero to villain. If you become somebody that no longer is still on the narrative team, you veer off of that on just one topic, you're out. Yeah. So it's, and
then you see the narrative for the first time. A lot of those people are
there
is a narrative. Oh my God.
Yeah. Now I get it. I thought you guys were all a bunch of complainers and crazy people. Now I get it. Now I understand why you're complaining. Now I understand why you're right. There is a gigantic narrative going on.
Oh shit.
And as long as I was in with it, I was like going with the flow of the river.
Yeah, the minute the fish doesn't question the water in which it swims,
you got it. The minute you get outside of that stream, you go, whoa. It's like they've left you, man. If you're not on board with that team, if you're not ready for your 4th booster shot, then fuck off. You are dead to them.
Yeah, man. And that's why I'm really thankful I did all those psychedelics, because I feel like that perturbed my consciousness enough to not fall for a lot of this shit now, because that was that was my wake up call. I know you've had some crazy psychedelic experiences too, which is cool. That so that's a whole nother ball game. I won't keep you too long tonight, but it was really great having you on, man. Oh, go ahead. What were you saying?
Well, I was going to say that I don't discount the benefits of psychedelics.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
I think that they are, I think that if you got everybody who was allowed to, felt comfortable legally or whatever, admitting to some of this, and you got the alternative media, the people that you consider to be able to see through the bullshit, I bet you they would score very high on the psychedelic test. I mean, meaning have at least had one psychedelic experience. I think that is not required, but puts you
initiation.
It puts you in a better frame of mind to deal with this stuff. It just kind of gives you an alternative perspective on things. And once you get an alternative perspective on society from a psychedelic standpoint, then you go, oh, I didn't even know there was any alternative to society, to the way everybody thinks. Then you go, you mean I'm allowed to think differently? And it's like, if you can, and that stuff kind of helps you so that you can, and it's not to say you need to like eat mushrooms every day, but like it does, there's some scientific benefits as well, talking about the rewiring of the neurotransmitters in your brain, doing PET scans and things like that, and saying they reconnecting neural pathways, before and after psilocybin mushroom trips and everything. And I had been telling my mother that since I was in college. I was like, I'm telling you, these things are good for you. They're like, actually, I said, not only are they not bad for you, I'm telling you, they're good for you.
I scared the shit out of them. Oh, my parents were terrified. I'm like, no, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. And they're like, what is happening? But sure enough, yeah. And now it's everywhere. It's in the medical field. The results are there. So it's like, holy shit, did I bring that back with me? Maybe I did. Maybe it was a premonition.
Yeah, but that stuff, but having that ability to kind of see the world in a different way, I think makes you, I don't know if better at figuring out the bullshit, just maybe more interested in figuring it out than other people. But I mean, everybody I know that does this sort of stuff is like, bring on the mushrooms, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Kind of allows you to I don't know, to just get also get like a check on yourself.
Yeah. I mean, you said it best when like you take them and then you go, oh, there was an alternative to society. It's kind of like, Eve eating the apple and Adam eating the apple, and suddenly they realized they were naked. Like, oh, I didn't know that there was a difference between it. This was just the water in which I swam. So getting that perturbed version of reality kind of allows your brain to go, okay, so there's more than one thing going on here. Mm-hmm.
And I would suggest that, one other thing that I think a lot of people that are in the alternative media have in common is that they've traveled. They've been places, because that gives you a different perspective too. If you've never left your area, you don't really know. Everything's just kind of theoretical, until you get out there and go see the world. So I think that it also makes you care about the world. Yeah. If you've been to a place, you tend to kind of like have a connection to it. And so I don't know. I think that these are, we're in a real interesting time right now. That's for sure. It feels dire. I mean, it feels dire. It feels, and I don't mean that necessarily in a negative way. It feels important.
Yeah, I like that.
Like if you have the ability to be awake, now would be a good time to be awake, because we kind of need everybody for this one. So,
and be that much more rewarding too for everybody involved.
Yeah. And I don't mean like we're going to war, we're going to battle. I just mean like we need a non-compliance for unjust laws. We need people to remember their power and to not forget that we outnumber these people, and that they, that part of it, not all of it, but part of this is about us agreeing to be controlled by these maniacs. And so we have to kind of coordinate in a way or come to some understanding that we also have some options to not comply, and to always remember that you have that option. If something doesn't sit well with your soul, you've got to examine why that is, and just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right. And just because something is illegal doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means that a couple of assholes in a suit got together and decided that it was legal or illegal. And so let's not measure our moral values on the scales of justice inside the American empire. I think that would be a catastrophic mistake. So I think just kind of get in touch with your soul and see kind of how you feel about things. And if your job is asking you to do something that you feel is not their place to tell you to do, then you act accordingly. And if it means that you're going to lose your job and put yourself in a really bad spot, well, you are going to, that's not to be taken lightly. And I understand that could theoretically be easy for me to say. I would suggest that would be a very difficult thing to do, but what's more important, your soul, being true to your soul, or you never know, man. You make that decision to walk away from that job because those people want to force you to do that, and you walk into a different opportunity that you never knew was there, that would have never happened if you hadn't followed your gut or your balls or whatever, you know what I mean? Just said, I'm going to do, like, this is personal to me. This is my line in the sand. I'm actually pretty easygoing with most things, but you've got to my line in the sand. It's this, I'm not going to be forced into doing this under any circumstances. And if that means losing my job, I lose my job. And then you say, oh, that's really scary. What is out there? And then boom, fate, destiny.
Yeah, man.
Good fortune. Your whatever, the universe, however you want to frame it, something is going to happen as a result of that.
Yeah.
And my guess is that it's probably going to be something great.
We got to bring back that gut, that attention to our gut, that intuition, man. We have to bring that back, because I feel like we probably had it a long time ago, vastly, but now it just seems few and far between of people that can pull it together and remember that they can make their own decisions about these things, and they don't have to look to anyone else to make the right decision for their soul and their self. And what are you going to be able to live with? That's kind of what I was saying.
You hate your job anyway. Doesn't matter.
Exactly. All right, man. Well, Charlie Robinson, thank you so much for coming back. And his new book, Hypocrazy, Hypocrazy, it's out everywhere now, man. And it's awesome. And I really appreciate you coming on, dude.
Thanks for having me back. I enjoy our chats. We always have a good time. We're able to get weird. I like that.
Damn right. And you can find Charlie on all the podcast platforms with his Macroaggression show, and find his books just on Amazon. Or can we contact you directly, or would that be just too insane?
You can get the new book in digital format by donating via PayPal at my website, theoctopusofglobalcontrol.com. $10 via PayPal, and I'll send you the new book in digital format. $15 or more, I'll send you the new book plus the first book, The Octopus, both in digital formats. If anyone wants the paperbacks, they've got to go to Amazon, because that's the place. They're the ones that print it. So, but if you like digital, if you're good with that, the website is the place to go.
Awesome, man. Well, it's the information that's important anyway. Anyway, thank you so much, Charlie. Take it easy, dude.
Thanks for having me.
Everybody have a great night.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Deep Share Podcast. If you want to hear more, then hit that subscribe button. Follow me on all the social places. And remember, think for yourself, but don't always believe what you think. Till next time.
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. Enough, I get the point.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature. And you will atone.
What do we know? What do we know? If I know what we know, then I can tell you what we know. And if
Someone else? No, okay.